There's one decision everyone who's watching right now or listening right now is making. You're making it every moment of your life. Now, you may be making it consciously, but more likely you're making it unconsciously. And these three decisions I'm going to show you, if you make them unconsciously, you're kind of controlled by the environment. If you make them consciously, you become the leader that can make it work. The first decision is, what are you going to focus on? And the reason is, focus equals feeling. And feeling, emotion, is what drives our action or lack thereof, or the type of action or quality of action that we take. So whatever you focus, even if it's not true, you're going to feel it. If you think that life is over and, oh my God, this is the worst thing that'll ever happen, we can never turn around, and you keep focusing on that, you will feel that and you will act accordingly and you will get that result. It'll be a self-fulfilling prophecy. If someone's ever come to you and they've said something like, oh my God, you think John's your friend, but he's talking behind your back. He's saying these things and doing those things. And if they're your friend, you go, that's BS. I know, Johnny, you never do that. But if the person persists, maybe two people tell you this. Now you might start to question. You might start to doubt. You might go, wow, could John really be trying to screw me over here? And then after you start to question, your mind starts to focus on it and you start to feel it. And all of a sudden you feel hurt or angry. And maybe eventually confront John. How could you say this or do this? I don't know if you've ever done something like this. I have in my life. And the person goes, what the hell are you talking about? I can remember my teacher, John Grinder. I was on a TV show and this guy called up and said, you're doing this, you're doing that. You're not supposed to be able to do this. And you're not a trainer in NLP and all this stuff. This is when I was doing NLP in the early days. And I said, look, John Grinder's my partner, the founder of NLP. And he goes, I just talked to John Grinder an hour ago and he told me all these things. And I was like, what? He's telling me it's on a local radio show in Colorado. And I'll never forget. And I was so first I was shocked. I was like, that's bullshit. Then I said, fine, let's call him right now. He goes, fine, let's call him. And so we tried to call him on the air, no answer. And so in my head, I'm like, for him to make that phone call, it must be true. So I was so pissed at John Grinder. I finally reached him. I was like, what the hell is the matter with you? You know I'm a trainer, blah, 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 blah. And he goes, Tony, what the hell are you talking about? I said, this guy, he's your former partner. He goes, yeah, he's my former partner. For the very reason of things you're saying, it's total BS. And I felt like a total idiot. But for a week, I was so stirred up and pissed off and hurt and sad. And it's all because I focused on it in my head. No matter what that person did with me, I allowed them to change my focus. So in other words, whatever you focus on, you're going to feel. Whatever you're going to focus on is going to be real to you. And if you allow the external world to do it, you're a follower, you're not a leader, and you will end up where most people that you desire or deserve. Let me give you 3 patterns of focus real fast so that we can turn this into something practical for you. Because you say, okay, well, I focus on this, I feel terrible. I focus on this, I feel better. Well, that's obvious. But let's take 3 patterns of habits, because it's not what you focus on once in a while that controls you. It's what you focus on regularly. So let's take an example. Do you tend to focus, all of you that are watching right now, listening, I'm asking you personally, if I were to ask you, do you focus more on what you have or more on what's missing? What would your answer be? If you had to be totally clear. I know you do both, but where do you spend more of your time? Focused on what you have or what's missing? Well, I know if I ask people right now, the majority of people are focused on what's missing because it's so obvious, but I mean normally day to day. Well, when I do big seminars, 10, 15,000 people all over the world, 100 countries, I can show you that the achiever's disease, those people who are achievers focus more on what's missing. They used it in the early days to motivate themselves, to drive, to change things. But here's the problem. If you make that your regular habit, you're no longer getting your drive. Once you've done that for years, drive is who you are. An achiever is who you are. It's part of your identity. What's really the problem is, how can you ever be happy or fulfilled when you're constantly focusing on what's missing? How are you ever going to be truly, fully, and certain empowered when you're focused constantly on what's missing? So you can achieve a lot and still be miserable. You can achieve a lot and not have what you really want. Or more likely, you won't achieve as much as you want because you're overwhelmed by the stress from focusing on what's missing. So as a simple habit, if all you did was start to focus on what you're grateful for, as corny as that sounds, what you have, in a state of gratitude, you destroy the 2 emotions that destroy most people's lives and most businesses for leaders: fear and anger. A decision made from fear is almost always the wrong decision. A decision from anger rarely supports you long term. And so when you're grateful, you can't be angry and grateful simultaneously. You can't be fearful and grateful simultaneously. So focusing on what you have is the place to start. And also, it's really hard to grow a business when you're focusing on what you don't have. But there are things you have, there's resources, there's understandings. We'll cover some of them in this conversation. Second, what else do you focus on? Do you focus more on what you can control or what you can't control? Now, unfortunately, most people in our society focus on what they can't control. And it would be natural to feel that way right now because there are a lot of things you can't control, like whether you can ever work or not in some states or cities or countries. But the truth of the matter is, the only way you can be empowered to change is focus on what isn't within your control. There's lots we can't control. The more you give that energy, the less energy you have to move your business and your life and yourself forward. So you got to train yourself to focus on what you can control. Now, most people come to my seminars, the majority of people are focused on what they can control. That's why they came to the event in the first place, because they came to learn how to master their business or their finances or their body or their emotions or relationships or whatever area of life they wanted to go for. So they believe that. But what happens if you have these two patterns, or you've developed them since you've been, in quarantine, which would be easy to happen to even a very, very smart and bright person? What happens if you start focusing constantly on what's missing and what you can't control? What are you going to feel? You and I both know you're going to feel frustrated or sad or depressed or enraged or overwhelmed, minimum stressed, which is not going to produce the result that you need. I'll give you one more pattern real fast. Past, present, future. Where do you tend to focus the most? The past, the present, or the future? Now, everybody does all three. But if I asked you personally, where do you, in the past, let's say before quarantine, where would you put most of your attention? If you're part of a group that are business people, entrepreneurs that have taken their guts and put it on the line, right? They've started their own company, then the chances are they tend to focus on the future the most. Like, how can I make it happen, right? The people that focus on the past the most, rare in my audience, because you can't change the past. And the truth of the matter is, unless you're remembering a really great memory, it's not going to move you very forward. You're trying to drive forward and you're pointing backwards. It's pretty hard to make any progress, right? The present is the only place of power and control. And the present is the place where you can still find joy. The present is where you can still find the things that you have. The present is where you can focus on the things you can control. And the future is what you got to create. So great entrepreneurs focus on present and future versus past. How many of you know somebody that takes antidepressants who's still depressed? And like 92, 95, 98% of the room raise their hand no matter what country I go in. Well, how could somebody be depressed if they're taking antidepressants? Because antidepressants just suppress the feelings. They numb you, but they don't get rid of the cause. If you keep focusing on what's missing and what you can't control, or maybe the past that's been painful or the present that's terrible, then of course there's going to be no progress. So the first decision that everyone watching right now is making every moment of your life is, what are you going to focus on? Right now, there's millions of things. I can look out the window while I'm talking, I can see this beautiful ocean splashing, the wind and the palm trees. I can look up and see your face, and I can think about you in Fiji, or you in the conversation we had, let's say in Vegas, or how proud I am of just you as a brother on the path helping so many people, and I could feel those feelings, right? Or I could say, when have I eaten last? Or, damn, it's hot in here. Whatever you focus on, you don't experience life. You experience the habits of focus you have about life. And the minute you make that first decision, your brain has to make the second decision. And that is, what does this mean? And this is where life is shaped, because focus is the first element. But the minute you focus, your brain has to say, what does this mean? Is this danger? Is this opportunity? Because you've got a 2 million-year-old brain, and that 2 million-year-old brain is always looking for how to survive, how to fight if it has to, or flight, or freeze and hope it's not noticed. And we all have that same brain. If we don't condition it, it comes up, especially at times when your business or your life or your identity, because most people, by the way, own a business. If their business is going great, they feel great about themselves. If their business is not going so great, they don't feel so great about themselves. I don't know how many of you can identify that your business is like an expression, a part of you, or a part of your family, or how you live your life. So meaning is everything, and we allow other people to tell us what things mean, and there's a huge price for that. So you have to decide what it means. Is this the end or the beginning? If you think it's the end of a relationship, you're going to behave very differently than you think it's the beginning of a relationship. That's pretty obvious, right? If you think someone is dissing you, disrespecting you, versus they're challenging you, versus they're coaching you, versus they're loving you, you're going to have a completely different emotional response and behavioral response, right? It's a different world. And you get to make that decision. Most of us don't. We let the environment condition us to just respond. Some people get angry all the time because they feel they're being disrespected all the time. Some people get excited no matter what. They see everything as a challenge, right? Is God challenging you right now? Are your problems in your business God punishing you or all of us? Is this God's gift to us to grow? Or does this nothing to do with God? It's a bunch of human beings that made some decisions that are affecting each other in a not so great way, and we got to do something about it. Your decision about what it means controls the emotion. If you want to jot something down, write down meaning equals emotion, and emotion equals life. If you change the meaning, you'll change. And so your goal is not to be a positive thinker. That's bullshit. I believe see things as they are, but not worse than it is. Find the empowering meaning. That's not about being positive. It's about being intelligent. If you see it as it is, but not worse than it is, you're not going to make the crazy decisions or just give up. Then you got to see it better than it is. Because without a vision, people perish. What makes you a leader is you have a vision beyond this moment, and you got to come up with it. Now, I know that's not easy, but the way you do that is by putting yourself in the right psychological, emotional states. That's my venue, obviously. And then thirdly, you got to make it the way you see it, and that's strategy. The new strategies that are going to make it work. So I'm giving you a long answer because I just want to get this out. It's like delivery. I want to deliver this for this audience of people because they're my brothers and sisters. We're all gladiators out there with their own businesses. We're the ones on the line. And so how do I make sure that I focus properly? Like I focus on the things that are stronger? How do I make sure that I come up with more empowering meanings and come up with better emotions so I make better decisions? A big part of that is what I did when I had my first crisis, which was when I was 17 and my mom kicked my dad out and she was mad at him and he ran and went to Chicago, left us there. And then next thing I knew, my mom was upset with me. She chased me out, with a carving knife on Christmas Eve. I love my mom. I wouldn't be who I was without my mom. She was a great soul, but when she drank alcohol and took prescription drugs, she was a different creature. And so I had to figure out what to do. And I had a 1967 Volkswagen Bug. Actually, that's a 1960 Volkswagen Bug. And then I had no reverse. I'd park on the hill. I worked as a janitor, no place to live, no money, literally chased me out of the house. So I went up and I slept on this hill, I'll never forget. And then it rained. So next day I talked to a friend of mine, a girlfriend, wasn't an intimate girlfriend, just a girl who was a friend of mine. And they let me stay in their laundry room and I started to rebuild. And I did 5 things, and then I'll shut the hell up. I'm trying to dump the whole load on you, that I still do today. I've been doing it during this time because I've had the longest time off stage since I was 17 years old. And I've never been in one location this long since I was 17 years old. So while I'm spending 7 to 11 hours on Zoom every day with all 54 companies, figuring out how to keep them all going, I've also done these things so that I will focus properly, I will find better meaning, and I will make better decisions. And the 5 things real fast are: every day, you must feed and strengthen your mind. The first thing I did back then when I was 17 years old, I actually had about 19 bucks in my pocket, I think it was at the time. I took a bus and I went to this spiritual bookstore that I remember seeing. It was about 12, 13 miles away. And I bought this book called The Magic of Believing by Claude M. Bristol. And I read that book and it talked about conditioning your mind and training your mind. And in the laundry room where I sat there, I took soap and I put these quotes like, only a depressed person, a depressed person's a loser. I knew I wasn't a loser, so I was feeling depressed. I couldn't let myself stay there. I wrote my goals on the mirror. So I look in my face and see my goals and soap across from me over the sink. I mean, I did these incantations over and over again to train my brain. Every day and every way I'm getting stronger and stronger. And I do that for like an hour, going on a run, like a slow jog, just doing rhythm, I would do, God's wealth is circulating in my life. This wealth flows to me in avalanches of abundance. All my needs, desires, and goals are met instantaneously by infinite intelligence. For I'm one with God and God is everything. I still remember it from back then, doing it every day to condition my mind. And I read, because my teacher, Jim Rohn, used to say, leaders are readers, and used to say, every day, read 30 minutes a day. Not the shit that comes to your phone that's clickbait. A book, something that's going to give you philosophy or strategy or something that can improve your life significantly. That's what you want to read. And I'd feed my mind and I'd read. Rohn used to always say, stand guard the door of your mind every day. Unless you can make these 3 decisions strong, you're not going to do that if you don't feed your mind something strong. If you turn on the news, you're going to want to slit your own throat. So if you don't take control of your focus by feeding your mind something good, we know what's going to come out of it. So that's number 1. Number 2, every single day you got to feed and strengthen your body. Pete, I start every day. The first thing I do is something extreme. I jump in freezing cold water, 56 degrees. Unfortunately, I've built these around my homes around the world. And when I'm at my home in Sun Valley, I don't need it. I have one there too, but I use the river. I walk through the snow in the winter and I step right into that thing. It's usually about 39 degrees. There's never been a day where I woke up and go, I can't wait to get in that water. Never. But I jump in with no hesitancy because I've trained my brain to say, when I say go, we go. When I say do, you do. I don't negotiate with myself and say, well, maybe when I feel like it. Listen, you're not going to feel like doing most of the things you're going to need to do during this winter time. But if you get yourself to do those things consistently, you will dominate the marketplace. And when things change in the springtime, you'll be dominant for the rest of your life. So I started my business in the roughest winter, 78. It made me incredibly strong. It'll do the same thing for you. Every generation has its testing point. This is our testing point. But you got to strengthen your body every day, like going for a run, lifting some weights, strong, intense walk if that's what you do best. But something where the blood gets pumping in, because you got to remember, fear is physical. I'm sure if you've ever been really fearful, you feel in the back of your throat or your gut, that horrible feeling. But courage is also physical, right? You train yourself. So you got to do something with your body because you can't separate the mind and the body. You strengthen your mind and your body. You're going to make those better decisions. You're going to focus better. You're going to find better meanings and you're going to take better actions. Third, real fast, you got to find yourself a role model or a set of role models because role models make it real. And you find people that have done it during the tough times. What I did back in 77, in the middle of, what they call stagflation, 18% inflation, prices messed up, people unemployed. I'm trying to start a business. It's like, fix my body, fix my mind, but who has done well in the worst times? And I focused on Sir John Templeton, who is no longer alive. I got to actually interview him multiple times when I was 30. I interviewed him 2 months before his death back in 2008. He was the first billionaire from nothing as an international investor. He saved 50% of what he earned. And in 1939, anyone watching it, we're not old enough to remember this, but in 1939, when Hitler invaded Poland, what do you think happened to the stock market? It looked like the whole world was going to end. The stock market went through the floor. He took $10,000. He had $5 he saved and $5 that he borrowed. And he bought every stock under $1 on the New York Stock Exchange he could get, including ones that looked like they were going to go bankrupt. Those investments, 5 years later when the war was over, everything changed. The economy took off and made him the first billionaire and international investor in history. And his whole thing was you make your most money in the times of the greatest pessimism. When the stock market is going great, everybody wants what for their stock? When the real estate market is going great, what price do they want? What it's worth? Or more or less? You know the answer, more than it's worth. And when the stock market drops, when people are fearful, right? When real estate market drops to the floor, what will they give you their property for, their stock for, anything they can get, right? So there's going to be tremendous opportunity if you can feed your mind and body and find some good role models to do well because, first of all, baby boomers are already, the leading edge of the baby boomers are in their 70s. They're retiring. And, 84% of all businesses never get sold. If you know how to run a business, you could take 2 or 3 businesses falling apart, put them together and have the greatest growth of your life during this time if you're not fearful and you feed your mind and do the things that we've been talking about here. There's opportunity without COVID-19. With COVID-19, businesses are going out of style. If you can keep your head straight, there's some tremendous opportunity, but you need some role models. Fourth, and by the way, have more than one role model. And don't make your role models God. There's nobody that's perfect. I used to get disappointed. Why aren't they this? What an idiot I am. They're humans. Some people are really good in business. They're not so good with their family. Some people are great with their family. I model the people that are good in the area I want to model. I don't expect people to be everything. Fourth, you need to get a plan and take massive effing action. Role models will give you more certainty with your body and mind strong. You're going to make better decisions. But man, most people are like, what if it doesn't work? Jim Rohn used to say, look, if it doesn't work, you'll find out quicker. Pick a direction. You'll find out quicker. I remember I interviewed General during the original war over in Iran and Iraq. The general there, 4-star general, unbelievable guy. And I was interviewing him. He was telling me what he learned in leadership from somebody he worked for when he was a colonel. And he told me it's this decision that the colonel needed to make. And he'd spent 7 years trying to figure out how to make this decision. People on both sides argued for it and against it. And he came into a meeting, brought everybody together. He listened for 30 minutes, and then he stood up and made the decision. And everybody went and did it. And they're like, wow, that was incredible. And he said, permission to to speak freely, sir. And he said he went to the general at the time. He was only just a corporate or something of that nature. And he said that, sir, I did all the homework on this. You couldn't have read all that. You made that decision. How could you do that? And he said, a decision needed to be made. Smart people on both sides were arguing. So I picked one. He goes, no one's picked one for 7 years. He goes, if I'm wrong, we're going to find out quicker, right? And so he said he learned from that you've got to make those decisions. You've got to push yourself through there. So make a decision, try it. If it doesn't work, keep changing. And finally, the last piece is find somebody doing worse off than you are and help them. Because, what's a problem is all in your head. If you're driving home and, it's bumper to bumper traffic and you're late for a meeting, that's a problem. And then you run out of gas or your car overheats. Now, it's not a problem, the traffic. The problem is you got to push the car to the side and you can't even get to the meeting, right? And now you do that and you're walking, you try to use your cell phone and there's no connection. Now that's a problem. Now you walk 1.5 miles to the first, off-ramp, you walk down the off-ramp and you trip and break your ankle. Now, the traffic's not a problem, your car's not a problem, your cell phone's not a problem, your ankle's a problem. You go to the hospital, you get it set, finally you got cell service and you get a text and it's from your spouse or girlfriend or boyfriend and they say, I'm leaving you. Now your ankle's not a problem, right? Then you make it home and you think that your problem is your relationship and the doctor calls you back and says you have a tumor. See, what's a problem is so relative. Whatever you think your problem is, I guarantee you there's somebody else worse off. 7,200 children die every day. Think about that, 300 an hour, right? They're dying of hunger, but most people don't pay attention to it. So there's all kinds of problems. If all you do is focus on problems, you're gonna have challenges. You gotta pick your problems, focus on the ones that are there, and you gotta focus on solution. But if you can help somebody worse off than you, you're gonna understand you have no real problems. So that's a quick data dump of the core of what I do. I take care of me and train my leaders, and we focus on making these 3 decisions from that empowered place. And then when it doesn't work, we change until we figure the way. How's that for a short answer?